Section is on the forgetfulness, which Malik's madhab is a little more complicated than the other madhabs do one or the other. Imam Malik he differentiates between omission and commission in the prayer, what's called a ziyada or a nuqsan. So if you do something, you committed something that you shouldn't have done, or you omitted something that you should have done, it's going to change the ruling. The omission, missing out something, is worse than commission generally. So sahu means forgetfulness in Arabic. Saha yashu, sahwan, to forget something. The Prophet ﷺ forgot once in a prayer. I mean, the ulama say that the Prophet ﷺ, the things that he does generally are for teaching. So he did certain things. If Allah caused him to forget, it was for the teaching point of the prayer. But he did forget, and one of the Sahaba asked him, "Did the ruling change?" In other words, is there only 3 rakats instead of 4? And then the Prophet ﷺ asked others if they, and then he corrected it and then did his sujood for the sahu. So this is from the sunnah, and the sahu means to forget something without, that you genuinely forgot it. It wasn't something that you were aware of. If things are done intentionally, it can change the ruling. But it's mentioned in the Quran, الَّذِينَ هُمْ عَنْ صَلَاتِهِمْ سَاهُونَ, when Allah censures those who are neglectful of their prayers, meaning they delay the times, they don't really aren't concerned about the times. So the sajda to sahu, which is 2 sajda after the tashahud al-akhir, so when you finish the tashahud, you either do it before the salam or after the salam. So if it's before the salam, it's called a qabli, which means in Arabic before. And if it's after the salam, it's called a ba'di, which means in Arabic after. So you're doing it to redress whatever wrongs that you have, whatever you've done in the prayer. And so it has the niyyah, that you're actually redressing it. So you have the intention to redress it, and then it has the sajdat al-ula, and then the sitting between the two, and then the sajdat al-thaniya, and then the salam, getting out of the prayer. And the tashahud can be repeated, but it's getting out of the prayer. So those are the obligations. And then the sunan are to do the takbir and the tashahud. You do not, if you forget something in your prayer, in the sahu, there's no sahu for sahu. So you don't, and some people have problems. Unfortunately, there's people that are called mustankih or muwaswis. Mustankih al-shak is somebody who almost every prayer they have problems. They can't remember how many rakats they prayed. They can't remember if they did this. They can't remember. People that are preoccupied, people that are under a lot of stress. There's different reasons why people do that. And some people have obsessive compulsive disorder, which Imam Ahmed Zarruq actually identified waswasa as, he said it's either ignorance of the sunnah or it's a psychological disorder. So it's something that people recognize earlier. But if you do have that, then the ruling is, it has a different ruling. He'll get to that. So the prostration of forgetfulness is either a qabli or a ba'di, and it's performed before the qabli is performed before the exit salam. It's performed for forgetting or omitting a stress sunnah, right? So it is not performed for leaving out recommended acts or obligatory acts. So the method of performance, after completing the final tashahud of the prayer, like salawat on the Prophet ﷺ, making dua, and before saying the exit salam, perform 2 prostrations beginning with Allahu Akbar. After completing both prostrations, you recite the tashahud ending with Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluhu, and then the final salam to exit. And then the rules for performing a qabli. If one performs qabli intentionally for leaving out one stressed sunnah, the prayer is rendered invalid. If one owes a qabli, in other words, if you look at the stress sunan, the 8 stress sunan, like the sir and the jahar and the sitting, the tashahhud. The tashahhud has the sitting and the tashahhud. Most of these stress sunan have more than one with it, so you don't confuse the two, right? In other words, the sahu is for 2 or more stress sunan, but in each one of the stress sunan are generally 2 sunan. So that's what's happened. So if you do it for for one of the stress sunan, then the prayer is invalid. If one owed a qabli and forgot to perform it before the salam, the following applies. If one remembers shortly after exiting the prayer, one needs to make it up by performing a ba'di. So if you owed a qabli and forgot to perform it before the salam, then if you remember it shortly after exiting the prayer, you do the ba'di. And then if one remembers after a long period of time or after leaving the masjid, then the following applies. If it was due to 2 stress sunan, then one need not make it up and the prayer is valid. If it was due to 3 or more stress sunan, then the prayer is invalid and you have to make it up. So if you miss 2 stress sunan and you forgot to do it and you leave for the qabli, then the prayer is valid. But if it was 3 or more, it's invalid. Alright, so that's the qabli. And then the ba'di is the prostration of forgetfulness performed after the exit salam. It is performed when one forgetfully adds certain acts during the prayer. So the method of performance after completing the prayer and exiting by saying Assalamu alaikum, perform 2 prostrations beginning with Allahu Akbar. After completing both prostrations, you recite the tashahhud ending with Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu Muhammad Rasulullah, and then you exit with the final salam. So if one forgot to perform the ba'di, then upon remembering, one makes it up regardless of the amount of time. So Ibn Ashur says, وَاسْتَدْرِكَ الْبَعْدِ وَلَوْ مِنْ بَعْدِ عَامٍ. You make up the ba'di even if it's after a year. So a year later, you're sitting in your room, you remember, I didn't do that. In the prayer, you do so the ba'di, you do it anytime. And then also, there's no prostration of forgetfulness is required for the following acts: leaving out a virtuous act, leaving out a recommended act, leaving out a sunnah that is not stressed, sending salutation upon the Prophet upon hearing his name mentioned, fixing the prayer barrier, the sutra, as long as there's not too much movement, walking the distance of 3 prayer rows. So if you walk, it's permissible to go in front, right? If a space opens up, you go in front like that. If it becomes too much, then it's too much movement. Fixing one's prayer shawl without too much movement, yawning or covering the mouth. You cover the mouth like that if you yawn in the prayer. Clearing the throat, doing tasbih to alert the imam of an error he made, like subhanallah if the imam or the women clap if the imam makes a mistake. And then shifting one's weight from one foot to the other. None of these affect your prayer. Motioning with one's head or hand to return salam. Most of the ulama say that the salam is wajib to return. So if somebody says Assalamu alaikum and you're praying, you just motion with your hand. You don't give them a salam, but you motion with your hand. Crackling one's knuckles is makruh to do that, but it doesn't break it. Swallowing a morsel of food. If it's a small amount, that just like something was in your mouth and you swallow it, it doesn't. And also scratching lightly. Reciting the qunut supplication audibly instead of silently. None of those affect them. Now in terms of redressing a pillar, the arkan of the prayer, which are the fara'id that were mentioned, you have to redress those because the sujood as-sahw does not fix those. So if you don't redress those, then the prayer is invalid. So leaving out a pillar must be redressed. No prostration of forgetfulness can suffice for it. Even though once you redress it, you still do the sahw. But you have to redress it, unlike the sunan. So for instance, if you're in the first rakat, you're in the second sajda, you're in the second rakat, second sajda. And instead of sitting, you go up. You've left out the julus and the tashahhud, two sunan mu'akkada. So now you owe a sahw. Which one? A qabli, right? Because you've omitted. Now, if you did something like you recited out loud the Fatiha in where it should have been a sir, then that's a commission, right? And then if you sat, for instance, in the first rakat, you did the julus and you did the tashahhud, then you realized, then that's a commission. So that's a ba'di. You go up and you just continue on with your prayer. The ma'moon, nothing is going to affect as long as you don't do anything completely insane. The imam takes all of your commissions and omissions. Unless it happened after his salam and then you are doing a rakat and you make a mistake in that rakat, then you redress it. But the imam takes your... that's why the imam's role is so important, because the imam is carrying the prayers of the congregation. The Prophet ﷺ said to put forward, he said one of the signs of the end of time is people will put imams with good voices. You know, that he said they won't have fiqh, they'll just be people that have good voices. And so you want good people to lead your prayer because they're carrying your prayer.
I just mean that when you sometimes when you join the prayer late, like the imam is on in the second rakah, so you're joining the prayer late, and then obviously they're going to be sitting down for tahiyyat.
Then you sit down with them.
You sit down with them.
Yeah. See, look, if you come in with this is the most complicated section in prayer, and it's kind of, I don't know if it's designed to just keep people really present. It seems like Malik is just like, you better be present in your prayer, because if you mess these up, you're going to really be in trouble. Do you know? It's almost like he's kind of saying that. It's like it's worth paying attention in your prayer. So if you come in and the imam is in the first rakat, the second rakat, and so this is your first rakat. You go down with him, and then he sits. You sit with him, but now you're going to owe a rakat. So when he says his salam, you get up and you finish the rakat. You build on whatever it is. Now the only thing about, sometimes you can end up doing 3 julus. All right, because you have to do a julus for the second rakat, and then the third and the fourth. So you'll end up doing 3 julus in some situations if you come in late with the imam. All right. What's that? Because you did a julus, and then in the second rakat you do another julus. And then you do a third julus at the end of the prayer. So you get 3 julus in that. Yeah, you say the tahiyyah with the imam. Yeah.
If you miss a rakat with the imam, then you sit in the final rakat with the imam. Is it in the Maliki madhab that you should do that salat al-Ibrahimiyya after the tashahhud? You should even cry?
Yeah, no, you wait. You do the tashahhud, you do the salat al-Ibrahimiyya at the end of your prayer. You act as if that's your second one.
If you do the salat al-Ibrahimiyya,
It doesn't affect it. Yeah, it doesn't affect it. No.
and the basic rule of thumb you learned from Maliki sujood sahwa was al-qaf bil-qaf was divided with that. So the qaf is the nuqsan qaf.
All right. That's one way to remember it.
Is this under sujood
we'll get, yeah, that's under congregational prayer. You know, it's the rules related to congregational prayer. Uh-huh. Right. The light sunan are you know, there's only 8 stress sunan, right? The sirr and the jahar, the julus, the tashahud, right, and the 2 or more, the takbir that you have to do, and then so any of those that you miss out, right, you do a sahu for, right? But if it's like the light sunan, like if you have 2 takbir, right, or if you have I'm going to go over all these. Okay, so I'll go over them because let me get through this section and then I'll go over. Uh-huh. Say that again. Fatiha is a rukn, so you have to redress the Fatiha. No, if you miss it in any one rak'ah, yeah. So, for instance, if you went down into the ruku'ah, you'd have to go back up and do the Fatiha again, like that, and then you would owe a sahu for that. No, you have to do, if you forgot, you'd go back up, recite. If it depends on where you are. If you're still in the ruku'ah. Hold on. Leaving out so a pillar must be redressed. No prostration or forgetfulness can suffice for it. Redress a ruku'ah before bowing in the following rak'ah. Alright? So redress a sajda before rising from the bowing position in the following rak'ah. Redress al-Fatiha before rising from ruku'ah. If you've risen from ruku'ah, then you have to do a rak'ah at the end, right? Uzma? You do a rak'ah at the end, and then you do the sahu. So for sajda, for one missed prostration, if one had not sat, return to the sitting position, and then make up the missed prostration, continue on. If one had sat, go directly into prostration and continue on. For missing both prostrations, go directly into prostration and continue on. In all these cases, a ba'di is owed for the extra actions performed. So if one missed the chance to redress the pillar, then the rak'at that contains the missed pillar is voided. And then the one that follows takes its place. A ba'di is owed unless the rak'at that was voided contained a surah, and the rak'at that replaced it is without a surah. In that case, a qabli is owed. In the case of leaving out al-Fatiha, if one missed the chance to redress it, finish the prayer, perform a qabli, and repeat the prayer with the intention that it is obligatory to repeat it, regardless of whether the time is still in or not. So you'd redress it and then make up the prayer like that. So this, now I'm going to go through the actions of the prayer related to al-Fatiha. All right. So if you leave out the Fatiha, you complete the prayer and do a qabli and then make up the prayer. Recite an extra Fatiha unintentionally, then you do a ba'di because you've done a commission. Repeated al-Fatiha to redress a mistake, you do a ba'di. So if you made a mistake in the like you recited the Fatiha silently in an audible rak'at, then you repeat it again and then you do a ba'di because of the commission. Recited 3 verses or more of Fatiha silently in an audible rak'at, you do a qabli. Recited 3 verses or more of Fatiha audibly in a silent rak'at, you do a ba'di. So those are related to the Fatiha. In the surah, if you left out the surah, then you do a qabli. If you left out, if you recited the surah before Al-Fatiha and did not repeat it after, then you do a qabli. So you recited the surah before Al-Fatiha and did not repeat it after Al-Fatiha, then you do the qabli. Recited the surah before Al-Fatiha and repeated it after, then there's nothing owed. Recited the surah silently in 2 rak'ats in an audible prayer, you do a qabli. Recited 3 verses or more of the surah audibly in a silent prayer, you do a ba'di. Recited multiple surahs in a rak'ah, nothing owed. Recited a portion of a surah, nothing owed. So even though in Malik's madhab it's mandub to recite the surah completely, if you don't, it's not, there's nothing owed, it's acceptable. And then started one surah and moved to another before completing the first, nothing owed. Also the order of the surah is the same. It's mandub to follow the order of the Quran, but if you don't, it doesn't affect you. So those are those are the related to the surah. And then the takbir and the tahmeed. So the takbir is saying Allahu Akbar. The tahmeed, Sami Allahu liman hamida. If you left out 2 or more takbirah, then you owe a qabli. Left out 2 or more Sami Allahu liman hamida, you owe a qabli. Left out a combination of takbirah and tahmida, you owe a qabli. Left out only 1 takbirah, right? Then you owe nothing owed. Left out only 1 tahmida, nothing owed. All right. Now on the tashahhud, if you leave out the tashahhud, you remembered it after both knees and hands have left the ground and didn't return to it, then you owe a qabli. So once you go up off the ground, you've omitted doing your tashahhud, and you have the julus and the saying the tashahhud, so, and sitting for it. So those are all, you're redressing those. Remembered it before completing Al-Fatiha and went back down to repeat it. So in that case, you owe a ba'di, right? Because you shouldn't have. Now you've done excessive movement. Did everybody follow that? In other words, we should make maybe copies for these, and give them. I think that'd be easier, because it's a complicated chapter. I mean, to make it as simple as possible, what you have to keep in mind is that it's either excess or you're either committing something or you're omitting something. If it's committing something, then you owe the ba'di. If it's omitting something, if you've forgotten something, you owe a qabli. That's the basic rule. But then you have to know the stress sunan. All right, you have to know the 8 stress sunan, because that's going to relate what you owe, or 2 or more of the light sunan. If it gets, if it gets where you're in shak, then you do the qabli, right? So if you think you owe a ba'di and a qabli, then the qabli overwhelms the ba'di. And if you do make a mistake, because sometimes you'll do this, you'll do a qabli or a ba'di, and it serves as the sahu. So even if you make a mistake in your sahu, you did the sahu. As long as you did the sahu, whether it was before or after, the prayer is valid. So don't get obsessed about, if you can't remember, just do the and then the rak'at, unintentionally added an extra rak'at, so this is related to the rak'ats, then you owe you owe a ba'di. So if you added an extra rakat, like if you went up for a 5th rakat and then you realized, then you've done commission, so you add a ba'di at the end of that. Now, what's important to remember is if you know the imam's wrong on a 5th rakat, don't go up with him, because if you do go up with him, your prayer is invalid. So if you're certain the imam has done 4 rakats, or 3 in Maghrib, or 2 in Fajr, and he goes up for a 3rd, don't go up with him. Wait until he comes back down. I mean, you say Subhanallah, you call his attention, wait till he comes back down. And then finish the prayer with him, like that. And then you do the sahu with him. But don't follow him in that. Which is a good point about, one of the things about prayer is it teaches you not to follow blindly. You know, that you maintain your own, even if the imam's wrong and you know he's wrong, you don't follow him. What's that? In a rukn. Yeah. Yeah, you do it with him because he made the mistake and you're in his prayer. Yeah. Uh-huh. There's a salam after it. Yeah, there's a second salam. So you do 2 salams. Yeah. If you do a ba'di, you do a second salam to get out of the prayer. And then, so in the rakat, if you intentionally added a rakat, then it nullifies the prayer. You have to make up the prayer. If you unintentionally doubled up the number of rakats, then again you have to redo your prayer. If you intentionally left out a rakat, again, the prayer is invalid. If you doubted the number of rakat, then built on certainty and complete rakats there was doubt about, then you do a ba'di. So always, this is the rule, you always build on what you're certain. So if you've prayed, if you're in a rakat and then you think, did I pray 3 or 4? You build on 3, and then you do the ba'di. All right. Because what you might have done is an extra rakat, but you always build on what you're certain. Yubna ala al-yaqeen. So if you ever have doubt, you just look at what you're certain about, and you base the redressing on your certainty. So in the ruku', forgetfully added a ruku', you do a ba'di. Intentionally added a ruku', it ruins the prayer. Sajda, if you forgetfully added a sajda, you do a ba'di. The obligatory prayer, if you intentionally added it, it nullifies it. And then the final salam, if doubted performing the exit salam and an intermediate period of time passed or moved out of one's place without turning one's back to the qibla, then sit down, repeat the tashahhud and the final salam, and you do a ba'di. So if you're there and you realize I didn't exit from the prayer, and it's not that long of a time, you know, it's a moderate amount, and you haven't turned away from the qibla, then you just do it and you do your the prayer. If you doubt performing the exit salam and a long time has passed, then you have to repeat the prayer. All right? And doubted performing the exit salam, short time has passed, was still sitting in one's place, then performs the salam, then there's nothing on you if it's a short time. Unintentionally performing the salam before completing the necessary number of rakats, then perform takbir and complete the missed rakat, then you owe a ba'di. So unintentionally performing the salam before completing the necessary number of rakats, then perform takbir and complete the missed rakat, you do the ba'di. Intentionally performing the salam while doubting completing the prayer, then you make up the prayer. Correcting a Quran reciter other than your imam, you have to make up the prayer, because you can't talk in the prayer unless it's to correct your own imam. And then speech that's not from the prayer, unintentionally spoke a few words or even one letter, you do a ba'di, because you've committed. If you unintentionally spoke a lot of words, then you make up the prayer. Intentionally spoke even a letter, then you make up the prayer. And then to rectify the imam's mistakes, there's nothing owed on you. If you're weeping intentionally with sound, so like showing off or something, it invalidates the prayer. I mean, there are people that do things like that. And then unintentionally over a worldly matter, if it is for a short amount of time with sound, you owe a ba'di. So you lost your job and you start weeping. If it's for a worldly matter, then if it has sound, if it's just tears, it's not. But if it has sound, then you owe the ba'di. And then unintentionally over a worldly matter, if it's for a long time with sound, then it invalidates the prayer. And then without sound, if it is not for a long period of time, nothing. Without sound for a long period of time, then you should also make up the prayer. And then smiling also, or laughing, qahqaha, breaks the prayer if you laugh. If it's smiling, if you smile for a verse that's being recited and it's a beautiful verse and it's something that brings you joy, then that's fine. But if it's over like worldly matters or things like that, you know. Yeah, that's what I mean. If it's something brief, then it's nothing owed. But if it's distracting your prayer, then that's really what they're looking at, where you're not really thinking about your prayer. Because the prayer is a place of haiba. It's a place to be in awe of God. And it's not a place to be... It's like, you know, people don't laugh in front of a worldly king or a president. You know, so the analogy there is, you know, if you're in the presence of majesty, you tend to... I mean, I've been in, like, you know, I've been in King Hassan's court. I've been in... Trust me, nobody laughs. You know, I mean, nobody laughs. So that's the metaphor. It's just, it's inappropriate in the presence of divine majesty to be laughing. And if you're smiling, the king's going to wonder, what the hell is he smiling about, you know? So... It's very interesting, you know, being in the... Because you really get, especially in medieval, because King Hassan's court, I mean, it's not the same as his son, but King Hassan's court was like a medieval court, very much so. You really felt this must have been what it was like, you know, several hundred years ago. Because it was very... and one of the things about it is, you know, nobody ever made eye contact with him. It was very interesting. If he would look, people would look away. You know, it's just the adab of sitting with the king. It was very interesting to see that. Moroccans are funny too, because, you know, King Hassan was he was like this polymath. You know, he could do so many things. But if you go into any store in Morocco, if it's like a sporting goods store, it's so funny. They'd have a picture of King Hassan playing tennis or playing golf. You know, if you went into the coffee or tea shop, he'd be drinking a cup of tea, like a picture of him drinking tea. If you went into the, and this, I'm not joking, if you went into the to make a phone call, like in the teleboutique, he'd be on the phone, right? So everything. If you went to the tailor's thing, they would have him being measured for a suit. A picture of him being measured for a suit. So wherever you went, they would have a picture of the king that worked for... So when I was recording the burda, we went to the studio, you know, to record the burda. And I walk in, and all of a sudden again, I look up, and there's King Hassan playing the accordion. I swear to God. And I said to the Moroccan, I said, could King Hassan play? Was he a musician? He said, "Musiqi kabir." I said, "Really?" He said, "He was a great musician." And I said, "That's amazing." He said, "الملك عندنا لازم يتقن كل شيء وإلا ما يكون ملك." You know, he said, like, For us Moroccans, the king has to be good at everything, or else he shouldn't be king. And then if you went into the religious place, he'd be reciting Quran or praying Taraweeh. So also, if you say Yarhamukallah to somebody who sneezed, you owe a ba'di. Right? If you intentionally say that knowingly, then it breaks the prayer. Also replying to somebody who says that. Unintentionally blowing with the mouth, like that, doing something like that, you owe a ba'di, because it's like sound. But intentionally, then it invalidates the prayer. Mm-hmm. No. What's that? I mean, if you do that, it's not gonna. Yeah, it doesn't harm it. And then the laughing again, if it has a sound, if it's called qahqaha, yuqahqihu, then it breaks the prayer. And then eating or drinking, if it's intentionally, then it breaks the prayer. If it's unintentionally, then it's a ba'di, if it's a small amount. And then if you fall asleep while you're praying, it invalidates the prayer. Yeah. If you have any stomach reflex and you didn't swallow it, then it doesn't harm the prayer. If it's vomit, then it does, as long as it hasn't changed. And then also, if somebody intentionally belches, then it invalidates the prayer. If they couldn't help it, then it's a ba'di. Uh-huh.
If you started a prayer and you felt that you're not predicting for sure, you're not really in the mood, and you just feel like...
Yeah, no, you can start over. Yeah, if you're really not, it's good to go do wudu again. Like if you're really, because sometimes people go into the prayer and they're just completely, and they realize it. Then it's good to do that. If you didn't have like any niyyah or anything, if you came in and you should finish the prayer and then repeat it, just make it up again. Yeah, because it's not good to break a prayer that you've gone into if your niyyah, you finished the prayer. But you can make it up. If you feel like I didn't have khushu' in that prayer, you can go and do wudu and then make the prayer up. Uh-huh. What's that? You just leave the prayer. Once you've lost wudu, you just leave the prayer. Yeah. The prayers, because that broke the prayer. Or if you remember, if you're an imam and you remember that you weren't in wudu or something, your prayer up to that point is valid. But if you wait at all, you invalidate the prayer of the people praying behind you as well. So the imam has to leave the prayer immediately and either do istikhlaf. If he doesn't think anybody there would know the prayer, then he doesn't do the istikhlaf. But somebody can take over the prayer. If they know that they know the rules and the imam doesn't know that and they go out, then they can take over the prayer, but they have to make that niyyah. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Whoever did what? I don't know that hadith. I don't know that hadith. Uh-huh.
Back to the khushu'ah that you, when you are feeling like as you approach the salah, can you delay it with, if you're like really, emotionally distraught or stressed out versus how you said, the sister gave the example of if you started and you kind of didn't realize your khushu'a wasn't all there, but what about as you're approaching it? And how is that in reference to jama'ah and when it's by yourself? You know what I mean? Like if you're coming into the musalla and you're knowing it's time for salah, let's say it's, a 2-hour window still of the dhuhr, let's just say for an example, and you just are out of it. Can you, because I know it's not good to delay the salah, can you do that? Can you delay it knowing that if I do it right now, even though I have to do it, I know like my mind is just really stressed out or I'm emotional, you know what I mean? Like how does that work?
Yeah, it is.
And if it's jama'ah, where you want to catch it, but you're like, if I takbir right now, I just cannot compose myself. But you know what I mean?
No, that's true. People take time. And I mentioned the other day, I think, about the Libyan man. Did I tell that in here? Yeah, getting the Kaaba in his mind. He used to always, he'd come to the prayer and everybody'd say Allahu Akbar, and then, he'd wait, and then, like, the imam's well into the first rak'ah, and they'd hear him Allahu Akbar. So finally, somebody just said to him, why you always wait to go into the Takbirat al-Ihram? He said, you guys are so much better than me. It takes me that time to get the Kaaba in front of me. So they made him the imam. So, it's definitely khushu' is الَّذِينَ هُمْ فِي صَلَاتِهِمْ خَاشِعُونَ. Allah says that they're people of khushu' in the prayer. That they have khushu'. And khushu' is related to presence, and it's a istish'ar, it's related to really feeling the divine presence, that you're in the divine presence. Because the Prophet ﷺ, the reason he said you should never go in front of a person praying is because he said, yunaji rabbahu. He is in intimate discourse with his Lord. Now, obviously not everybody's in that state, but that's the ideal, and that's what you're not supposed to be breaking. Because if you pass in front of somebody, you could completely, and that's happened. I was in the haram once, and I was in a complete hal in a prayer. And some guy next to me just started doing this, moving around and completely just took me away from it. So that happens. It's very real, obviously some people, they don't have, there's stories of Sahaba about, pulling out the arrow and things, wait till he's in prayer. That's real. That is real. That is absolutely real, of people that were so present with their Lord that they did not feel their bodies. I know that's real. Mm-hmm. No, I wouldn't leave the prayer just, you should finish the prayer. No, unless you didn't have niyyah, unless, there was something. Mm-hmm.
Well, just to answer his question, because I've kind of been in that before, but like, sometimes when you join, even though you're in a bad state, once you pray, that actually helps you get out of your state. And then if you have a good opinion of Allah, and just try to go in with that, and then you try, and then if you didn't, then you could just make the prayer up later, right?
That's true, yeah. You shouldn't leave the prayer once you go in, unless you did not have a niyyah. Then you should. But if you didn't feel like you had khushu' in the prayer, again, you can husn al-dhan billah. And also, don't forget, part of the reason why the Prophet ﷺ said that he gave us the rawatib. There's nafila mu'akkada, like the 4 rakats before dhuhr and the 4 rakats after. That's nafila mu'akkada. It's very strong nafila. The reason that you do those is to redress what is deficient in the prayer. So it's like a decompression chamber, there's an antechamber. Yeah, exactly. So you get ready, and then you do the second as a way of redressing what was in there. And that's why right when you finish the prayer, the sunnah is to say astaghfirullah immediately. That's the first thing you do. Assalamu alaikum, astaghfirullah. Because there's always deficiency in the prayer. And the first thing people are taking into account for, according to the hadith, is the salah. You know, hasibu. And the hadith says, if there's any deficiency in their fard, Allah tells the angels, look into their extra prayers and take from that to, you know, to redress the wrongs of the fard. So, what's that?
If the imam breaks the wudu and just leaves and doesn't put in a replacement, as a follower, what do you do?
Then you just finish wherever you were, yeah. If he left you without an imam, then you become your own imam. Your niyyah changes, yeah. Yeah, your niyyah. Because before you were mu'tam, now you're, yeah, in your head, that your prayer is your own. You shouldn't follow somebody next to you. I think there's a madhab that does that. I don't know. Where you actually go, like, pray with the person next to you and follow them. I've seen people do that. I don't know if that's an opinion or... But that's not... You can't do that in Maliki madhab. Because the imam has to have... You know, he's leading you, yeah. What's that? Make dua before what? Yeah. Sidi Ahmed Zarruq says, if you have a lot of waswasa, he says to do قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ النَّاسِ before you do your takbirat al-ihram. You can do whatever you want before you go into the prayer. Yeah, no, you do dua. In the tahiyyah, after you finish, yeah, it's good to do dua. What's that? Yeah. Throughout, yeah. Yeah, no, dua is good. After you finish the Salat al-Ibrahimiyya, then you do dua. As long as the imam's going, then when he says salam, you go out. If you're on your own, you do it as well. Yeah, you can do that. In terms of the traveling prayers, well, let's do Jum'ah. That's the next section. In terms of the Jumu'ah, فَصْلٌ بِمَوْطِنِ الْقُرَىٰ قَدْ فُرِضَتْ صَلَاةُ جُمُعَةٍ لِخُطْبَةٍ تَلَتْ. In villages and cities, it's required to pray a congregational prayer that follows a sermon. So, for the Malikis, you have to have a qarya, and that means there has to be a marketplace. So it's not just a collection of houses. There has to be a marketplace. If there's no marketplace, then the Jumu'ah, like here, I mean, people can pray because that's an opinion, but here, according to the Malikis, there's no Jumu'ah. You just pray Dhuhr. Where I lived with the Bedouin in Mauritania, they don't pray Jumu'ah. You know, they're resident. They don't pray Jumu'ah. They just pray Dhuhr. So, because Bedouin don't pray Jumu'ah. And there also has to be a jami'. And a jami' is a mosque erected for Friday prayer. And this obligation is binding upon every resident without a valid excuse not to attend, who is a free male and lives within a parasang, right, of the masjid. So it's like 3 miles from the masjid. So Well, yeah, it depends on whether you. It's basically the parasang is, which is I think it's a Hindu word actually, but the Arabs call it the farsakh. And depending upon which number you use for the Arabic mile, some use 2,000 cubits. That's what my teachers used in Mauritania, was 2,000 cubits. A cubit is 1 arm's length. So the Bible uses the cubits. It talks about the cubits. It's from your elbow to the tip of your thumb. So 2,000 or 3,500. Those are the two opinions. Some say it's 2,000, and that's what my teacher followed, which would mean that it's valid to pray the traveling prayers with 30 miles of an English mile. Or on Juma, but I'm just giving you what they measure here. So there's a difference. If that's the case, then this is about, it's almost 2 miles, the parasang here, which would be an obligation. So if you live within 2 miles, now obviously this is walking pre, car and things, and I mean technically these types of rulings don't change. So for instance, 30 miles before cars was an incredible, it's a day's journey. Now it's 30 minutes. But the rule still applies. That's the way it's looked at. So anyway, that's what he says about the masafa. And then it also suffices in place of dhuhr and others upon whom it's not incumbent, such as women. Women don't have to pray Jum'ah. If they want to go to Jum'ah, they shouldn't be prevented from going to Jum'ah, but it's not an obligation on them because of children. It's just seen as the menstruation, all the things that prevent women from leaving the houses, things like that. So it's not in any way naqs in her. It's just it's a takhfif for the women. That's all it is. But if she wants to go, the Prophet ﷺ said, "La tamna'u ima Allah masajid Allah." Don't prevent the maidservants of God from going to the masajid. If they want to go to the masajid, the husbands are supposed to facilitate that for them, but they don't have to. In the Maliki jurisprudence, you need 12 male residents in order for there to be a Jum'ah. If there's not 12 male residents with the imam, then the Jum'ah, you pray dhuhr instead. Abu Hanifa has 3, right? Yeah. And then Imam Shafi, I think, has 38. With the imam, yeah. What's that? Huh? Mukallafin. They have to be mukallafin, resident, male, in order. I mean, it's what the minyan, what the Jews call the minyan, because they have the same ruling.
So I work in a hospital, and the nearest masjid is 5-6 miles away, and they do Jummah prayers in the hospital itself.
I mean, that's an opinion, there's people that do that. So in Maliki madhab, it's not a valid Jummah, but it's valid in the other madhabs. If Sheikh Abdullah bin Bayya, he's a Maliki, but he's of the opinion in the West, be really lenient on the Jummah. Just give people a lot of room, because they're not living in a country that has the day off on Friday, that there's a lot of problems that go with it. Because like in the Hanbali madhab, you can pray before zawal, as long as the khutbah, the actual sermon, is after zawal. So he said, just let people, if they need to make it at 12 o'clock for the lunch hour, and then the imam should do it till like 12:30 when the zawal comes in, and then give the khutbah. The prayer, as long as the rakats are in the after zawal time. The khutbah can be before the zawal. So, that's his opinion, and, I think people need to be facilitated to do that. If you're a physician, and you're on call, or you have to be near the hospital, then it could be, jeopardize your work like that. And then you can, if you know, I don't really like to say this because Jummah is min ash-sha'air, but there's a valid opinion that the Jummah is not even valid in you know, non-Muslim countries. Yeah. So in fact, there's an opinion that the Jummah is not even valid anymore in Muslim countries, which is why in Syria, the ulama, a lot of the ulama pray dhuhr after Jummah. Who's been to Syria and seen that? Have you seen that? Yeah, they pray dhuhr. Everybody. And that's because they're fuqaha, you know. So they pray the Jummah and then they pray the dhuhr ihtiyatan. So, you know, because you need you know, Jummah is really a function of the imam. And if you don't have an imam to sanction that, the Iranians didn't pray Jummah until Khomeini. They prayed Dhuhr. There was no Jummah in Iran until Khomeini came back after they toppled the Shah. So, you know, those, but there's no doubt, there's a hadith in the Muwatta that whoever leaves 3 Jumu'ah without valid reason gets a seal on their heart. So the congregation prayer is important. It's from the sha'air, and it's an important thing to maintain in our community. That's why I wouldn't say that. But if you do have difficulties in your job or something like that, you know, you just do what you have to do, and there's leniency. It's not like a rigid thing. All right, and then a lot of Jummahs here are invalid anyway, just because the imams don't know what they're doing. I mean that's just a fact. There's a lot of if you ask them what are the obligations of Jummah, a lot of these people that are leading the prayers couldn't tell you. You know, I mean, I've gone to khutbahs where they're mispronouncing all the hadiths, all the ayahs are, you know, the rafa' and the nasab and the jar, it's all over the place. Like Imam Zayd said, the man who gave the khutbah, you know, ظهر الفساد في البر والبحر, you know, and then the man got up and he said, وعلى المنبر. That's an Arabic joke. Yeah. Because it's على في البر والبحر. It should be majroor, but he put it in the nominative case. It should have been the genitive case. So the guy said وعلى المنبر, you know, like the corruption is also on the minbar, because the verse says, you know, there's corruption on the sea and on the land. So he said it on the minbar as well. So, you know, it's a problem. So generally, it's good to do the Jummah prayer. I mean, I think, ihtiyatan. Pray the Jummah with the niyyah, and then do a dhuhr prayer is a good thing to do. Anyway. Uh-huh.
This name often used in place of a masjid because the intention is the gathering.
This is a musalla. It's a temporary musalla. It's not a masjid. It's a temporary musalla. Yeah.
So when you're traveling, you can, if your intention is study or
Mm-hmm.
gathering, you can make that place
Wherever you, as long as it's a clean place. You can do it in your room, you know, wherever you are, as long as it's a clean place. Obviously, the more people in the jama'ah, with Malik you get a jama'ah, there's an opinion with your wife, you know, or husband, that's a jama'ah, but generally it's 3. You know, if you have 3 people, you get the reward of the praying in the jama'ah. So, but the masjid has an extra. Mm-hmm. Can women?
Can women together do the prayer?
You know, that's a Shafi'i position, and there's definitely strong hadiths for that. Malik didn't have it; it wasn't something he found people in Medina doing. He considered those hadiths to be khasa'is. You know, there's certain things the Prophet allowed certain people to do that didn't have a universal applicability. But there's one Imam, Ibn Ayman, in the Maliki madhab who considered it valid. Like, women could lead the women in prayer. If they do lead the women in prayer, they don't lead out front. They lead, yeah, in the same front line with the women. I mean, I tend to incline. I mean, I like that position, personally, and I also I like the Chinese practice, which is to have masjids for women. I think that's a really neat cultural practice of the Chinese Muslims, because the Chinese have masajid just for women, women's only. I mean, it's interesting here. They say separate but not equal is unconstitutional. That the Jim Crow laws were considered unconstitutional, and the only place that we have now segregation is in toilets, which is changing in the universities now, because now they're actually starting to have shared bathrooms between male and female. That's what I heard anyway. I mean, it was kind of a shock for me to hear that. But, the idea is that there's certain things that you want privacy. You want your private space. And the polarity, the dynamic of men and women is such that there's always the potential for attraction and for... I mean, it's a cliched motif in Hollywood films to have the church scene where the two young people are like looking at each other while the minister's giving the sermon. I mean, that's like a cliche in untold numbers of films. But it's not a cliche for no reason, right? Because I remember being in church, right, when I was a teenager. And so there is a reality to, just to helping people to get their intentions right. It's one of the reasons why, and it's actually a testimony to the higher spirituality of women, that men don't have women praying in front of them, whereas the women can have the men praying in front of them. It's really a testimony. And there's a reality to the fact that women are not as attracted to physical form as men are. I mean, this has been done. This is social science. That a physical form... I mean, Stanford did studies where they would show naked pictures to men, and they would become aroused by them, and then they would show naked pictures to women, and they would laugh. It was... it was just a very different response. So, because women need much more emotional content in intimacy than men. I mean, it's a weakness in men. So that that idea of having separate space is very much, it's the Jewish and the Islamic position. The Christians, obviously, in early Christianity, it was more like that. But as Christianity developed, it changed. But they really did used to have separate, they had separate areas for the men and the women. That's obviously no longer the case. But that's the. So I do like that, personally. I like that idea, and I like the Chinese model of having, in Baghdad they used to have these ribats for divorced women, where they could go into khalwa, and they would actually do their iddah period in a spiritual state. Because one of the things about divorce is, for women in particular, they're much more devastated by divorce than men. Although there are men that can be heavily devastated by divorce, but men tend to, tend to handle it better than women. But that opens up a spiritual, opening for a woman. It's like, when I worked in critical care, because I was in a cardiac unit, it was always amazing to see these people right after heart attacks. And you'd see this gap. It usually lasted for about 3 days, where they were really reflecting and thinking about death, and I need to reassess my life, and I need to get my priorities right. But then they start feeling better. The doctor would say, "You're looking great." There's just, put you on this, that, or the other, and you'll be feeling fine, fit as a fiddle. And you would just see the change, and they just go back and start making their plans. And and so those are like spiritual windows that people have in their lives. When a sudden death, your parents die, you get these spiritual windows, and the heart opens up to it, and then it closes back again. And divorce is one of those times. And you can go the kind of resentful, angry route, which is one way, and a lot of people choose to go that way. but it's also a time just to realize, one, that women don't need men to be completed. Women are not completed by men. Men already know that generally, but women, that's something that has to be learned over time. That there's a complementary relationship between men and women, but a woman is complete unto herself. She does not need a man to be complete. And Maryam is the great example of that. That's why she's such an exemplar in the Quran, because Mary is the woman who doesn't need men to be impregnated, and she doesn't need men for her provision. God gave her both those things. And one of the meanings of Maryam in Hebrew is a woman worth two men. Because that's essentially what a man gives a woman, provision and pregnancy. But God gave Maryam both those things without a man. So she's got the she's got the that spiritual advantage of not needing the man. So that opening is an incredible opening for women, and it would be good for us to develop those things in this culture, I think. To have retreat places for women, so that they can develop within their own spiritual context, because they have a different spirituality than men do. And the Prophet ﷺ definitely addressed that aspect.
I read this once that there was one, same teacher was one who divorced, and that was the first time that she did the sajda. She basically acted like a fitra, and that was the first time. And that's how she became a religious.
Subhanallah, yeah. So, and then the sunan of Jumu'ah is to perform ghusl just before leaving. It's better to do it right before you go to the masjid. If you do it in the morning, if you're working, that's fine. But the sunnah is to do it right before you go to the masjid. It's recommended to leave for it at the time of the midday heat, before the zenith. When it's starting to get really hot, it's like about 11:30. And then go before the actual zawal, go into the masjid and do some, read Surat Kahf, do something. And then to go in an elegant manner, which means, according to Qadi Iyad, cutting the nails, shaving the pubic hair, removing the armpit hair, and then wearing the best clothes, preferably white, and applying the best perfume, and cleaning one's teeth. Unfortunately, in the old days, and like I saw Morocco when it's still, Jummah was a real serious thing, because the older people in Morocco always wore their best clothes. It was a beautiful thing to see Jummah. That's all changed, which is a bad sign as far as I'm concerned. In the West, you call it your Sunday best. It used to be people actually had clothes that they saved just for Sunday. And it was their best suit, because the idea you're going to God's house and you give God your best. Now you see people in T-shirts, in jeans, they look like they haven't taken a bath in a couple days, and yellow teeth. It's not a good sign. I mean, these are all, the Prophet ﷺ was teaching people excellence in their, and he was very concerned about hygiene. Prophet ﷺ he could not stand bad smells. I mean, he said, whoever eats onions and garlic, stay away from our masajid. Just don't come. Right? So Ramadan, Allahu Akbar, you've got an incredible qari, you're in this thing, and then somebody belches next to you in this whiff of, whatever they ate, garlic and onions, and it's just, those type things are and the Prophet didn't like even belching. He said to a man who belched, he said, kuf anka jashak, don't belch in our company. It's just, those type things are all about civility and adab and comportment, and the Prophet ﷺ, he just had so much adab in everything that he did. He was more modest than a virgin in her cloister before she came out. He had incredible modesty. Things in his gathering were always done in the best of taste. And despite that, I mean, he had a wonderful sense of humor, and he was certainly in no way a prude. I mean, the Prophet ﷺ is so far from a prude. Anybody that reads, the seerah and some of these amazing stories, and he was not prudish at all. He was very, he recognized human nature, human foibles, and he laughed at the appropriate times. He never laughed inappropriately, but at appropriate times he laughed, and he told jokes, and he appreciated a good joke. I mean, his Sahaba used to tell jokes, and he would laugh with them. So, and Nu'ayman, who was like a court jester, used to make him laugh, and he was a character. I mean, he used to send him, gifts, like he'd send him, food or perfume, and then he'd send the guy that he bought it from to the Prophet to pay for it. So the man would show up, he'd say, "Who are you?" He said, "Nu'ayman bought some perfume from me. When I asked him for the money, he told me to get it from you." So he'd give the Prophet the gift, but then he'd charge him for it. And the Prophet loved him, I mean, in the riwayah, I mean, they're of the opinion that he was the man who was punished for drinking alcohol when he was punished. And people forget that the Prophet ﷺ, they did not have harsh punishment like they used to. It was like a public shame thing. Like we used to have blocks in America. You had blocks. You put people in blocks. They have this because they would. It was public shaming. Just so keep public order. But that in a sense is what they were doing. Like the Prophet ﷺ, when people were punished, it was usually with a palm fiber. It wasn't hard, but he was punished for drinking, and it had been more than one time, and somebody was there seeing it, and he said, "Allahumma al'anhu," God damn him. And the Prophet said, "Don't damn him, because the only thing I know about that man is he loves God and His Messenger." And that's in Al-Bukhari. And Ibn Hajar says that is the most hopeful hadith for the people of major sins. Because even though the man was a reprobate, the Prophet did not deny his love for God and for the Messenger. So a congregation, 13 people is needed, which is 12 and the imam. For other obligatory prayers, it is a confirmed sunnah. The reward of praying in a congregation is realized with only one rak'ah or any portion thereof performed behind the imam. And so now the recommended acts in the prayer in congregation. It is recommended for an individual to repeat a prayer that he has performed alone should he find a congregation performing it, except for Maghrib as well as Isha if you perform witr. So if you prayed on your own, Dhuhr, and then you find a group praying Dhuhr, it's recommended that you pray you can't lead the prayer because you've already performed your fard. So you should not lead the prayer. But if you find a congregational prayer, then you should pray it. You should pray it again if you don't have to again. It's just mandub. It's mandub, so it's a good thing. It's makruh in Malik. You can do it. It's makruh to do it because nafila is more a private thing. Even in Malik's madhab, Taraweeh is better in your house. Yeah, than in the masjid. It's better to pray it in your house, unless you're lazy and you end up not doing it. But if you actually can do it, it's better to pray in your house than it is in the masjid with the. There's a lot of things Muslims do that are very interesting. Like one of the things that I find amazing is in Mecca, the Taraweeh is huge. I mean, Taraweeh in Mecca is just unbelievable. But Tawaf is better than Taraweeh. And that's the best time to make Tawaf, because nobody's making Tawaf. They're all praying Taraweeh, even though Tawaf is better than Taraweeh. Isn't that amazing? This is really interesting. There's a lot of things like that Muslims do, where they just get it completely backward. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, you need to do qada. We're going to get to qada because it's an important bab, and some people do have prayers that they need to make up. But in Maliki, your niyyah has to be the same as the imams. Like in Shafi'i, they don't. So if you're making up a prayer that's different from the imam's niyyah, it's invalid. If you're praying behind him. So for instance, he's praying dhuhr, but you're doing a makeup of dhuhr from 2 days ago. It's not valid. Because he's doing that dhuhr, whereas he's doing ada, and you're doing qada. So there's farq fi niyyah. Together? That's valid. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Is it still considered makruh to pray like tarawih in congregation at home?
No. You can pray with your family, you can pray with, yeah. But it's better to pray. The nafila is always better between you and God. Because, the hadhun nafs is that. See, the thing about fard, there's no riyah in fard. Now there might be, but there shouldn't be. Because everybody has to pray fard. So you're not doing anything extra. You're doing what you're obliged to be doing. But when you're doing nafila, you're doing extra. So there's always the fear of the ostentation, the spiritual pride, the showing off coming in. And so generally, the Sharia develops these things. It's always better not to tell people you're fasting. It's better when you're doing extra things. If it's Ramadan, everybody's fasting. It's no big deal. But if you're doing nafila, it's like the man who's praying and really long prayer and and two men are talking, and he said, SubhanAllah, that man's so amazing, He's here every day. He does all these extra prayers. Doing that. And, the man turns around and he said, and you didn't mention I was fasting, too. So, alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. All right. Yeah.
Can you hold the Quran and read from it in Saudi?
Yeah, you can. Some of the ulama say it's makruh to do that. I definitely wouldn't encourage it for the imam because you're discouraging the hifz, So the and that's one of the khasa'is of our ummah is memorization. This ummah, very few people in other religions know their scripture. Imam al-Qurtubi, in his tafsir, "Inna nahnu nazzalna dhikra wa inna lahu lahafidhun," in that verse, he mentions that in Andalusia, because he was living in Qurtuba, he mentions that one of the Christians who was a calligrapher, master calligrapher, he did a Torah, but he put mistakes in it, and he took it to the Jew, like the best rabbi in Qurtuba. And he asked him to read it and tell him what he thought. And he read the whole thing. He said, "Did you read the whole thing?" He said, "Yes." He said, "What do you think?" He said, "It's a beautiful edition of the Torah." He said, "Are you sure?" He said, "Absolutely." He said, "Would you use it in your congregation?" He said, "Yes." And then he did an edition of the Gospel, and he put mistakes in it on purpose. And then he took it to the leader of the Christians, and same thing. And he told him, "Beautiful edition, calligraphy is excellent," And he said, "So you would use this in your?" He said, "Absolutely." And then he did a Quran, and he took it to the Imam in Qurtuba. Imam al-Qurtubi mentions this in his tafsir. So then he took it to the Imam, and he said, "Could you read this and tell me what you think?" So he read it all the way through. He said, "It needs to be burnt." And he said, "Why?" He said, "There are several mistakes in it." And so he said that he knew that the Quran had been preserved. But it wasn't preserved by the writing, it was preserved by the memory. Like our reliance is not on the Mus'haf, it's on the hifz of the masters of the... I'll give you an example. I had a handwritten copy of Sahih al-Bukhari from the Dila'i Zawiya in Morocco. It was about 400 years old. Beautiful edition. I tell this story with pain. But a really beautiful edition, gold ink. And I had a Hafiz over who knows all 9 collections by rote. I mean, just all 9. With the isnad. And I showed him this edition, and he was looking at it, he said, there's a mistake in that hadith. And he said, it's missing the min. There should be a min there. And it is amazing. So that's the, the hifz is like, so, if you're doing it privately, yeah, but I wouldn't encourage that in the masajid. People should either get a hafiz. And also, it's not necessary that you read the whole Quran in Taraweeh. That's something that was, it's not necessary. فَقْرَأُ مَا تَيَسَّرَ مِنْهُ. I mean, just, people can read whatever they want from the... I mean, it's good to do khatam in Ramadan, but it's not necessary to do it in... The Taraweeh is valid. The khatam is not a shart or a condition of the Taraweeh. What's that? I mean, I would get like because if you have too much movement, it invalidates your prayer. And that can be too much movement, So, but you can get a stand. They have stands, like a stand. You can get a stand and read from the Quran like that if you want. That turn. Well, now Twitter or whatever they call those things, they're going to have those, I'm sure, with the Quran pretty soon. I have, yeah. But they'll have I'm pretty soon they'll just have a hifz chip they'll put in your head. So.
Was he asking about the turning of the pages?
Yeah.
Well, they have spiral. I mean, we have this big spiral.
Yeah.
So after every 2 rakats, you just
turn the page, yeah.
And it's a big, so even if it stands kind of far,
yeah.
it's easier.
MashaAllah.
On the cases where Maliki still 36 rakats.
I mean, that was only for Medina.
Is it because the people in Makkah would do tawaf?
The tawaf. They had tawaf after every 2 rakats. They would make tawaf.
Talking about movement in salah, if you're
But Ibn Abi Zayd says that you can do that. It's in the... go ahead. Sorry. I was just thinking about... No, go ahead. I was just thinking about that.
if you know that if you moved a little bit, then you're going to have sakit and people can go without crossing you. Can you just take that extra 2 steps to the right?
Yeah, you can move slightly in the prayer. If you need to move to avoid, like even to avoid a insect or something like that, you can move in the prayer. It just shouldn't be more than 3 prayer, Even if you come into the prayer and they're in ruku', you can go into ruku' and then move like that, to catch the ruku'. You can do that.
Let's say you're a woman behind a male imam who makes a mistake in his recitation.
Yeah.
Can you say
You clap. Yeah.
what if it's mahram?
Yeah, no, you clap. Mm-hmm.
Just clarify how many rakats there are for Tarawih.
What's that?
How many rakats you pray for Tarawih?
The sunnah of the Malikis is from Umar ibn al-Khattab, which is to do 20 and then do 2 and 3. If you're praying in your house, if you do 8 or 10, that, however many you want. But the sunnah is 20. And they were short. I mean, that's why Imam, when you do 8, if you're doing the juz every night, they're long rakats. So the idea was to actually help people, give them that rest space. I mean, hadar, like a hadar qira'ah is, not so there's ikhlal of tajweed, but, tadwir al-hadar, is... If you do tajweed, you're going to be,
Oh, no.
you couldn't do it, you know, especially with warsh. You'll be there.
Still the qasr all the time.
Yeah.
تحية المسجد during the khutbah.
In Malik, you don't do it. If the imam started his khutbah, you come and you sit down. There's no tahiyyat al-masjid. You only do tahiyyat if you come in before the imams come out. Yeah. Mm-hmm. In the Maliki, the witr prayer, shafa' and witr is done 2 rak'ats, salamu alaykum, and then the witr prayer is 1 rak'at, salamu alaykum. There's no qunut like the Hanafi. The fajr is, you can do witr all the way up to fajr. If it's your want to, you know, and you wake up late and you didn't pray, because some people, you know, Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu prayed witr after Isha, and Abu Hurairah delayed it till before Fajr. So, you know, it just depends on what you do as a practice. If you get up generally before Fajr, which some people do, and you do a few rak'ats, or you do 8 rak'ats, or however, tahajjud. If you're doing night prayers, then and you're consistent on it, then you should pray witr then when you do that, because it's the last prayer. If, however, you're not consistent, or you're worried about oversleeping, then you should do witr after you do the sunnah of Isha, or do it just as your last after Isha, shafa' and witr. Either way. The qunut is only done at Fajr. It's in the subh prayer, after the second rakat, before you go into ruku'.
If you're consistent about waking up
Uh-huh.
and you woke up and did the witr over, you can do 2 rak'ahs and then witr again.
You don't do witr again. You only do it once. So you just do you end with your 2 rakats of your tahajjud.
Just want to speak to from yesterday. You were saying don't do your sunnahs after Jummah, just disperse. Am I clear on that? That you shouldn't do your sunnahs after.
Yeah, no, you go, if you're going to do sunnah, you do them at home. Or if you're not going to go home and you want to pray, then you should just at least wait till people leave, or go to the corner, the side opposite the exit of the thing. But it's makruh to do it, you know.
And if you come in and you haven't done your sunnah to be masjid, who goes at home? How do you make up?
What do you mean?
If you came to the kufa late, how do you make up for not doing your 2 rak'ahs?
Before? No, you don't do those. They're not made up. They're just not, they're nafilah. You don't make up, the only prayers you make up are fard prayers, and then the witr prayer, the shafa' and witr prayer, right? Then you make up that. But other than that, you don't.
What should the khutbah consist of?
In Maliki, it's supposed to be in Arabic, so it should not be it should be Arabic. The way that in Algeria, one of the places I studied in, the imams used to do a talk before Jama'ah in Ammiyah, because most of the people couldn't understand Fusha. So they would do a talk in Ammiyah before the Jama'ah, and then they would do a very short khutbah, which is what I do. I do a talk in English before the Jama'ah, and then do a short Arabic khutbah. But Abu Hanifa was of the opinion that the purpose of the sermon is to do wa'al for the people, and it should be done in the language of the people, which makes sense. It's interesting, there's the rulings, you can see how some of the rulings are to encourage people learning Arabic, and there's no doubt that the early people all learned Arabic. That's why wherever the Muslims went for that first 100 years, they're Arab countries almost. Right? I mean, if you just look at the geographical, Persia used to be almost entirely Arabic speaking. They were bilingual, like the Berbers in Morocco. The Berbers all speak Arabic and they speak their native tongue. So wherever the Muslims went early, they tended to create a bilingual culture, because people learned Quran. Quran was the basic literacy. So everybody learned Quran. So it's good to learn the sacred language of the religion. I mean, and so Imam Shafi'i in the early madhab prohibited transactions in other than Arabic. And his argument is an interesting argument. He said in any transaction, if you have people that speak different languages, you're going to use one language. So why, he said, are you abandoning Arabic to go to their language? You know, if they want the deal, then they should be doing it in Arabic. So he actually, and that just, you know, it's like now all transactions are done in English because the British were so good at, you know, imposing their language on the world. The French are still upset about it because they used to call, you know, the lingua franca, right, in English, that means the spoken language of a lot of people. It used to be French.
More specifically, I meant like hamd and
Yeah, so you do hamd, you do one ayah, you do some sort of wa'al in there. I'm going to do the shurut. Are there? It's the next chapter. Mm-hmm. There's no sunnah mu'akkada before Jum'ah. There's nafila. Tahiyyat al-masjid.
How many is that? 4 or 2?
2. There's nafila. If you're talking about the nafila, it's 4.
So you can pray 4 before the...
As long as he hasn't started his khutbah. Once he starts his khutbah, then, you know, إِذَا قُرِئَ الْقُرْآنُ فَاسْتَمِعُوا لَهُ وَأَنصِتُوا. You know, once the Quran is because he's going to be reciting verses, and you're supposed to listen attentively to the verses. You shouldn't talk when the Quran's being recited. And the Prophet ﷺ said, whoever even مَنْ لَغَى فَلَا صَلَاةَ لَهُ, you know, if you say anything, you know, it's like you've lost your prayer, even though the Jummah is valid, but it's as if, you know. All right.